happy Friday. Thank you for being here on the Friday of a holiday weekend. What better way to celebrate than by spending some time talking about our students and our students' experience. I'm Shelly Blair. This is Josh Leventis, our faculty coordinator for Guided Pathways. And we are super, super excited to be here because it is a reflection of all of the work that all of you have done to get here today. So if you're involved in a group, either a group that presented last time or this time, could you raise your hand? Most of the room, which is awesome. So we're really excited because this represents the culmination of work that was kicked off, a long time ago, but very specifically, these groups have been working together since our retreat, which was in July, August? It's all a blur to me now.
So this is the second round of presentations, right? So we're excited to hear what everybody has come up with. We have a few guests in the room. We have our Chancellor, Dr. Weisbanding, and the Regional Coordinator of Guided Pathways from the Chancellor's Office, Natalie Msall. We're happy to have them, and of course, we're happy to have all of you in the Zoom. And Dr. Adrian, of course, you guys. Dr. Adrian is here. Everybody else is here.
And we also have Wakisha, one of our students from our student advisory group on Zoom. So thank you for coming. So we're very excited to be continuing our work with them.
Right, so we might as well get right to it. So
yes, so go ahead.
Well, a couple things, quick notes for those groups that are presenting. Since this is being recorded on Zoom, it's a lot easier if the person speaking stands right about here where Shelly and I are kind of right in the middle between. And if you're not speaking, kind of move off to the side. The amplification is not necessarily for those of us in the room, so still do speak louder. It's really the amplification is for those that are on the Zoom, right, as well.
And we're also recording this, and it gets put on our YouTube channel like the previous one. So that's also why we need to have sort of the cameras right there, and then the microphones are here so that we can caption it properly.
So each group will present, and then just after each group presents, we'll take some time for any questions that might be had, and then we'll move on to the next group. And at the very end, Dr. Adrian will share her thoughts with us, and then we'll go enjoy our 3-day weekend.
All right, thank you. So first group, onboarding, come on up.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's an exciting presentation. Very good job, everybody did. And thank you to all the Zoom people. So first I want to introduce, this is the onboarding group. And I want to introduce all of our wonderful group. So we have Dr. Tom Neal, Mai Lee, Stephanie Rogers, Anita Russell, and Don Bui. And our wonderful group that can't be here, they're at conferences and doing other busy stuff. Amy Evangelista, Deborah Henry, Bruce Keeler, and Lee. Thank you for the support. So I'm going to read our mission statement. Should we have that up there? So our mission statement is to create a welcoming, clearly defined, and easy to follow onboarding process that provides students with a sense of you belong here. Thank you. So
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending this presentation. Again, I'm Don Bui, and I'm part of the onboarding group. Our group was tasked with 3 things to fix and to work on and to improve for the student experience. And the first thing was the CCC apply. Aside from a prospective student speaking with our wonderful frontline staff, among the initial experiences that they're going to have as a prospective student is to do the application for admission to our campus. And so we wanted to not only work on improvements for the application itself, but also for the entire experience of that from front to end. And we identified a few challenges in the beginning when we first did an assessment of the current application right now. And some of the challenges are, there are some unclear fields. There's use of acronyms and jargon and lingo that a student might not be familiar with, and so we also wanted to definitely take a look at that. There's also, at some parts, when it's really, really important, a lack of directions for students to be able to complete the application thoroughly and effectively, and also efficiently. And then another challenge that we ran into was the customization was limited because a lot of the questions, because it's through OpenCCC, a statewide system, we didn't have full ownership over making some of those changes. And so we also took that into consideration as we came up with the recommendations that we wanted to list out. Yeah.
Some of the recommendations that we came up with were to create a clear and functional Apply Now link on our Coastline website, make it visible for the students so they see it, click it, and develop a checklist for the students prior to applying, so know what they need prior to filling out the application. Just makes it easier for them. And provide the enrollment term dates. Right now, when you click on the term that you're applying for, it doesn't have the start and end date of that semester. It only says fall 2019 or like that. So.
And the other thing that we want to hopefully update are the supplemental questions. They are very district-wide, so they don't really pertain to Coastline students. For instance, what sport are you interested in? Yes, rifle. No, Coastline doesn't have rifle. We don't have any sports. So if we can get rid of those and maybe add something that benefits our students. And then there's also the needs and interests section where they ask for students to check boxes, EOPS, well, what is it? So this is where we're coming back to, if we can have links where the student can actually click on it, I want more information on this before I check this box. It won't leave the application, but it'll just take them and open up another window. And they can read a little bit about this and like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want more information on. So that's something that we are recommending, is just to update the supplemental questions and like Don said, just, clear acronym usage and things like that.
In coming up with these recommendations, it was really important for our group to also look at best practices elsewhere. And so in doing so, we checked out different application processes from other schools, for example, Fullerton College, Santa Barbara City College, and Santa Monica College, to come up with some things that we would like to perhaps adopt for our new experience for the student to apply for admission. We also consulted with our A&R director, Jim West, as well as the A&R directors from our sister colleges. We also consulted with District IT in terms of what can be done in terms of customization that would be done in-house without impacting the entire OpenCCC application. And we also learned throughout this process that the district was in the process of creating an application for just our 3 colleges. And so that's going to be something that we'll be looking forward to as well in the future. In terms of the evidence and support, this was part of the topic of discussion in Region 8, also in counseling and equity meetings. We also consulted the student voice through the student advisory group. And so for us, it was really important to actually not just get the recommendations from other schools, but also from the end user, which is the student. So that we found that part to be very, very valuable in terms of what we're finding out. So these recommendations here, such as, again, the clear and functional Apply Now link, which is currently missing on our website because it's not very prominent. You kind of have to dig through a little bit to see where it is. We definitely want to make sure that it's there. And then also have the checklist for students to be able to see what documents and what information they'll need before they apply, so that once they start it, they don't have to be deterred or run into a roadblock and say, okay, I need to pause this, get this, and come back to it. We want to make sure that once they start it, they can just finish it through and through. And so that's the first part of this onboarding group in terms of the application process. After the student applies, what he or she is supposed to get is the welcome letter with a lot of important information. And so the next part that the onboarding group is going to be working on is also the welcome letter. Mike?
All right. I don't know for those managers who was here, were here 3 years ago. So Dr. Adrian wants us to experience the life of the students applying to Coastline, and she tasked us to do that. So which we did, and through just like a team member just shared, through the application process, it took me 30 minutes to go through that. So it was very frustrated, finishing all the questions that is needed. And I was waiting patiently for a few days, less than 48 hours, I received a welcome letter. I was looking for it, but what I received from the email was quite disappointing. What I received was that it was no colors, it has no pictures, no videos, and just general information where it get very, very confusing for me. It did not have the registration date. So what we are asking and for recommend is redesign the welcome letter to brand it with Coastline, have some color, have some videos, have some pictures, so that the students will feel belonging, that they're welcome here at Coastline. What we also want is to make it accessible, but also have it geared toward two populations, so general populations and also military students. We also want, again, include the registration date and includes links and videos.
All right. So for the welcome letter, we want the students to feel what you might feel when you're looking at Dean Neal over here in this picture. Right? I mean, with the pom-poms cheering the student on and getting them ready for the experience that they're going to have at Coastline College. That's basically what we want it to feel like. And so in order to make this, of course, it was very important for us to consult the experts in this area. And so we looked at, again, our student voices through the Student Advisory Group, the Extended Learning Division, Jim West, other community colleges, including Santa Monica College, Skyline College, and Santa Barbara City College. Of course, we also got important information from Shelley and Josh as well regarding this process. And the evidence that we got allowed us to make a mock-up of what we envisioned for this welcome letter to be. And so we can take a look at that now.
So as you can see, this is what I received when I applied to Coastline. You see it? It looks very boring. Awful that is too. And so for me to grab certain information, like what is my student ID? What is my email? I just have to go through and try to find it. It was just not very clear. And this is what we are suggesting for you all. Just a mock-up, again, just some ideas. So if Shannon can go to what it could look like, if we were to able to modify it, as you can see, have some pictures, the branding of Coastline, and also the top right corner, all the important information. So if the students want it, it's right there. It has the student's ID, the user ID, the student's email, and it also has the term, is this for upcoming intersession in spring 2020. What also helps us here is indicates when this intersession starts, as well as spring. It gives us that date, and also what we, and Don and I were sharing is that regarding in the past, regarding registration date, it has, for example, register on November 21st, and that's it. So students assume that if I don't register by November 21st, that's it. I lose my chance. And did not know that they can register on or after. And we also, it was, when the students apply through CC Apply, they will enter, if they graduate within the last 10 years from high school, they can enter their math and English grade, and that will give them their assessment placement information there. So what we want to share is 6 simple steps of how to become a Coastline student. Step number 1, you've been accepted. Now what I need to do? Our students portal, MyCCC, is not as simple for us to navigate. So we want to do a video on it to show the students what is it they need to do to belong to Coastline and how to navigate it. And it will have a link here that they can click, give them their password. And also a lot of students have questions, and we've been gathering all those informations, and we want to have a page for them to reference to when they need it. Step number 2, orientation. Well, Tom and I will discuss that later, so stay tuned. We will be right back. And step number 3 is assessment. And what is math and English placement? Well, regarding AB 705, everybody needs to know about that. We will share this information here. How they can use their AMMAP, how they can able to see a counselor to do self-guided placement. And again, talk to a counselor if they even question regarding the placement that we received. So simple information for them. And Don now will talk about counseling.
So moving on to steps 4, 5, and 6 on this letter. First of all, I just want to reiterate that this information is not necessarily brand new, right? It was already on the welcome letter before. So what the welcome letter previously or currently does well is that it has the information the students need. But our concern is that through all the text and since it's all bunched together, it can appear kind of intimidating, that they might be missing information. And so with this, what we're doing is basically improving the visual impact of what the student sees when they're looking at this welcome letter. And so, again, in terms of information that is already on the welcome letter, but outlining it so that it's clear for the student, step 4 is the academic counseling and student ed plan, or SCP. You really want to make sure that students are going to be able to have that experience with the counselor so that they get the guidance that they need to be able to take the right classes that fit their academic abilities and their goals. Beyond that, all right, so now you are ready to register for classes, step number 5. But it's not just a matter of registering for classes, right? For a lot of our students who might be coming from a high school, for example, they're used to being handed a schedule when they come back to school in the fall. In college, it's not like that. However, we want to make sure that there's still support to scaffold the student in order to get them ready. And so we want to have videos, and we want to have just-in-time information in terms of what they might need to know at this very moment. So for example, right now, how do you read a schedule? How do you add a class? Here's a tutorial video for that. How do you obtain your textbooks through our bookstore online? Step 6 is how to pay for classes. At the forefront of what we do in student services is financial aid and making sure that students have the support to be able to go to school, right? And so we would have information on financial aid, scholarships, Coastline Promise if you are a recent high school graduate, and also other resources that they might need in order to successfully onboard and start to matriculate. And so beyond the experience of applying to college for admission and also to get this welcome letter, next up is the orientation piece. And that is the third project that our onboarding group is working on. And for that now, I'm going to hand it over to Dean Tom Neal and again to Miley.
Thank you. So back to me regarding our experience 3 years ago, right? So I did my application. I was feeling frustrated. I looked at the welcome letter. I felt disappointed. What do you think when I look at the orientations?
It was fabulous.
Boy, that's just a talk. Yes, and felt overwhelmed. So the orientations currently right now is district orientation, not Coastline Pacific. It's not very interactive, and it lacks information relevant to onboarding and retaining Coastline students. It lacks videos. So currently right now, our orientation is on Canvas. If you happen to go to it recently, there's 9 modules among that orientations that you can go through. Within that 9 modules, you know how many sub-areas? I counted them. 48. I know. I know. So, not to admit this to Dr. Adrian on camera and everybody out there, it took me an hour to go through not all the 9 modules. So I stopped because I felt overwhelmed. So I didn't complete it. And so I tasked, you know what? My best is my students. So I asked, Peter, can you go through it and let me know about it? And then, bring it back the resource for me. And, of course, he can't say no because not only that, not only my students, but almost my student assistant. So that was one of his assignments. So he came back and he said, did you know how it took me 30 minutes just to answer those quizzes? 30 minutes. So because he kind of knew Coastline already, he didn't go through the modules, not the 48 of them. He went straight just doing the quiz itself. It took him 30 minutes. And then 2 days ago, I received an email from a student goes, I did my orientation during the summer. But yet when I go to the portal, it says that I haven't completed. Can you check on this for me? Guess what? I emailed Jim West. I go, Jim, can you look into this for me? He did. He goes, guess what? The student only completed 59% of the orientation. And because in order for the students to get priority registration, they need to complete at least 80%. So we kind of put, something there so that makes sure to them to complete. But as you can hear, the student themselves felt frustrated and stopped and did not continue. So what we need to do is to do some module areas that it tells them, ooh, I'm still in Tom's area. He's doing the recommendation. Oops, his turn.
So as you can see, our ongoing theme here is to make everything a little more warm and welcoming. So our recommendations for our orientation is to contract with an expert. There is a number of companies that do this. We've looked into a couple of them, of absolutely wonderful products they put out. A number of colleges are using them. We want the students to see themselves in these videos. We want student voices. So we want little short videos of a student who's 18, a little short video of a student who's in the military, a little short video of a student who's a returning adult, returning mom coming. So we want to be able to see themselves. And again, with our theme of you belong here, I see myself as part of Coastline. That we use language in these videos that don't use acronyms. And those of you who've been around Coastline long enough know we have 27 pages of acronyms. And so the students don't know what those mean. We want a video that explains the different sites. We want student testimonials. We want the students to have interactive modules so that they can come back to them. So these are ones where they're piecemealed. So for each particular group, ELD will have their own set of modules. They'll be very, very similar in many of the things. We want them to be ready for day one. So the last part of this orientation is how to Proctorio if I'm taking an online class, how to buy my books, as we've mentioned before. We also went on our website, a wellness button. It's a little circle, and off of there would be clubs that I could join. Health, mental health. How do I get resources? Hey, I'm not eating. So, all that sort of stuff to make it more welcoming, and how do I find that page? And the last module for us is, one of my mantras is, how do I find the 5 people, my team, that's going to support me throughout my time at Coastline?
So through our process, we have consulted with the student advisory group. Our VP have spoken to our sister college and confirmed that we do not have to go over the district, and we can do it individualized within the college. Both.
But we are looking at those conversations to make this all better.
Okay.
None of us are happy.
Stay tuned. And come evolve and go to orientations and other colleges.
So our evidence support is coming from our student advisory team. That's been very helpful. Whenever we've asked them a question, they telling us what they need to know. Again, Comevo is one of the companies that's created videos, short, they're 45 minutes. You can get through them. Again, they're modular, so you can come back to them for 55 community colleges throughout California. And then we've also looked at other colleges and went, those are really nice. Crisp, clean, concise, student voice. I can see myself going to this school. Next slide, please. So again, you've seen our theme here throughout the onboarding process. We want a CCC Apply that's more personal, that's straightforward. We tell the students what they need to know before they start so they can sit down and walk through this. Our supplemental questions give us information about students that we will find useful. Right now, we don't have that coming to us. Followed by the welcoming letter that's much more interactive, that's clean and crisp and looks good, and students can follow that back. That letter will be on their MyCCC, so they can find it over and over again when they have to apply for the second semester. They can see the things they need to know. Oh yeah, I need to do that. There will also be a web page, so they can always find it on our web page. And then followed by this orientation that again tells students over and over that, so everything we want is to be directed, focused, nurtured, engaged, connected, and valued, that the students understand that they belong. Next slide, please. And questions all go to Amy Evangelista, and she'll be happy to answer. Now, we're here to answer questions if we're doing that now, or we're going to do it at the end.
Yeah.
We're going to do that now.
Okay.
I'm going to run this around anyway. All
Okay, thank you. Round of applause.
right, do we have any questions? All the way in the back. Make me run, Elizabeth.
Thank you for that presentation. It was fabulous. I don't know if this is a question or a suggestion. I also, like Mai, have gone through the process. I'm currently a student here at Coastline. And in the welcome letter, I know that step 5 is registration, but that's really the thing that students are looking for. So I'm wondering if you should consider that when designing it. Because when I first got that very long email, the first thing I looked for was like, how do I register? What's going on? So even to mention it in step 1, hey, by the way, step 5 is registration. We know that's important, that this other stuff is really going to help you, might just be something to consider.
Excellent, thank you.
Anybody else? Natalie?
So I'm curious to know, what was the process like, or did you have students talking to you about how they feel about the CCC apply and their challenges? Was this coming from them specifically?
Yes, because I work in the EOPS office, we did ask the students and their experience. Not only that, we also sent it to the student advisory as well to ask for their feedback. And the concerns was there. It was the orientations. It was a lot of great information, but it was just overwhelming, and it lost in translation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I would also say that 2 members of our groups answer questions constantly from students, so Stephanie Rogers and Lai Lee were very informative. Said, this is the question I get. This is the question I get again. It's the question I get again. And so that was very helpful. They were at their front lines, and they see over and over and over again the questions students ask, and that really led our directions.
How?
So since the first pillar for Guide Pathways is like enter the path, what I find is students don't really know which path to enter in the first place. I'm just wondering like what's being done to like address that. So like the career exploration to even figure out what path they're going in the first place.
So one of the things that we talked about when for the orientation was also to have the initial kind of, if you remember, Follow Your Own Adventure books, right? Where one of the initial things that a student might see when they go onto the online orientation is to identify what their needs are, what their plans are. So for example, military student, high school student, first-time college student, but has been out of school for a long, long time. And so that was an idea that we have, and we definitely also want to make sure that that recommendation stays when we are ready to elevate this to the next stage of development, so that the student could have that early pathing, right? Because if it happens too late, then this kind of lost that energy, right? And so we want to be able to have the student give that window for them to identify right away, okay, these are my goals and my needs. That's what I'm here, that's what I'm coming to Coastline for. And then from that initial point, they're able to then get a personalized orientation experience that is specific to their needs. And one last thing that's really critical for us in terms of the online orientation redesign or the ideas that we have for them is that we really want to make sure that students are getting things just in time, right? It's not everything all at once, but here's what you need to know right now versus here's what you will need to know, but not quite yet. And so these are all the things that we're taking into consideration. And so thank you for your question. It was definitely something that we talked about.
And one of the things, we didn't put the bullet up, but right before you meet with the counselor, step 4, I think, would be, here's some.
Thank you for calling Coastline Community College. We will be with you shortly.
Once again, our answering machine is from 1997. So one of the things we need to fix as well. But one of the things we want to add there right before you see a counselor is a link to career options, career path.
All right, thank you guys for that. Next up, we're going to have the advising group.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Kim. I'm the Associate Dean of Career Education at Coastline College. And I am the co-lead for this dream team, the advising team. Unfortunately, three of our members could not be here today. Stephen Barnes, the co-lead and faculty, Ann Holiday, faculty, as well as Velvet Missione, a counselor. And our dream team members are
and Aaron Thomas.
and it seems like we have technical difficulties. Okay. Since July, when we met in the wonderful hotel and had wonderful conversations about guided pathways, we have been working diligently, and we will be covering 7 areas today. From challenges and research to resource implications and outcomes.
Okay, so for our problem statement, we based it on Coastline's current model, as we are in the process of creating an advising model. So what happens is currently the student, they choose their classes, and once they choose their classes, they end up creating an education plan and receive resources if necessary. However, it does lack a strategic long-term goal setting with no case management approach to help students. To help students achieve long-term professional goals. So also the services that are provided, they tend to be fragmented, short, and infrequent. So students are left trying to piece together information, and also they have to put together, without understanding how to put together an action plan. Next slide. So for our challenges and areas of improvement, first we have this leads to the counseling and support services. They're located in different departments and in various areas of the college. So it can be confusing to the students and prevent long-term advising relationships. Second, we have too many technological platforms that don't necessarily promote, support, and sustain long-term advising relationships. Also, we have a diverse student population, such as part-time, incarcerated, military, as well as incarcerated, and each of these groups requires specialized advising and support services.
So to address these challenges, and recognizing that we wanted to be student-centered and equity-minded throughout this whole process, we spoke with a lot of different groups. Did you know that there are 17 different groups at Coastline that have self-identified as providing counseling, advising, or student support? So we spoke with as many of them as we could, but we placed most of our emphasis in terms of what we are recommending on the student input. So the reason we have all these groups is because Coastline really cares and Coastline wants to see success happen. The other reason is historical funding models, right? So we were given different pots of money from the state to support different student populations from an equity perspective. And what we've learned over the past few years, and when we look at the data, is that sometimes that works, like in the OPS, and we see improved completion rates. But of the vast majority of our student population, we're not seeing improvements in retention and completion rates. So our recommendations are threefold, and they're all very, very interrelated. First, we're proposing, well, first we have to recognize that there's many people involved in the advising function, and I think we could argue that every employee on this campus plays a role in providing meaningful and helpful information to students, regardless of our employee classification, right? But we're specifically suggesting that we identify a team of people, the 5 touches, there's Tom, and we assign this group to each incoming student upon their enrollment, and we've assigned them based on the demographic data they provide us in the new onboarding application process that we just heard about. Now, the ability of this group of people to support their team, their students, is limited by a couple things. Obviously staffing, but also by technology. So that's our second recommendation. There is a patchwork of different systems in use here at Coastline, at the Coastline level, at the district level. Different groups use different systems, and the systems aren't sharing information. So what we're recommending is that we figure out which platforms we want to use for which processes, and most importantly, that we provide access to that data for the individuals on that team to support their students in a FERPA compliant manner, of course. So that gives us the first part of part 3 of our recommendation, which is a student-centered model of support, right? Because now we as coastliners have a way to look at a student holistically and share that information about a student amongst their team of people. That helps us. But what about the students? So the last part of recommendation 3 is the next slide, which is to try and figure out how to provide student services where the students live. So I don't know if you realize it, but that page in all of our faculty Canvas shells that has that one set of student support services, that's a remarkable accomplishment. So just having that, it puts us head and shoulders above a lot of other institutions. However, that page now exists in hundreds, if not thousands, of courses, and it has the potential for getting out of date and having inaccurate information. This idea is to move that concept out to the Canvas dashboard. So that a student is in Canvas, they don't have to go to a specific course, they can get their access to their student services right here. The other benefit is that as those things change, and they will, right? We're talking about Pathways 1.0 right now, but there should be a Pathways 2.0, 3.0. So when they change, we can change it just in one place. I also think we can improve on this. So this is another college's work. Why don't we have a portal for the students' dashboard so they can see their education plan? They can see their status towards completion of a degree or certificate. I think we can actually improve upon this. And here to explain how all that is going to magically happen is Raman.
Hello everyone. So this is just an example of a visual that we created with the student in the middle. Once again, thank you to Dean Neal for the 5 touches creative idea. And so this would include, we're hoping to embed some of this information in the supplemental information as well as the welcome letter. So when a student is going to that step 4, contact counseling, they have an academic counselor assigned. Speaking with the student advisory group, students over and over mentioned how they like speaking with the same counselor. They want that relationship. And so this is our way of providing them with a personalized relationship-based support system. And then this is another example of a student dashboard, what it would look like from a student perspective. So student can go in and find the services, they can contact, currently we have success coaches that are embedded at each location, so they can reach out to those success coaches, set up a time to speak with them via Cranium Cafe in person or over the phone, and so this is just an example.
And so the theory that we're using is institutional agents. So this is actually a subset of social capital theory, essentially saying that anyone on campus could provide resources to students, not just academic, but career, social, emotional. That's all super important. So by having students like in the beginning, having their 5 people explicitly like right there, that's super important because each of us could play this role. Like every one of us here in this room plays this role in some kind of way. We advocate for them, we give advice, provide knowledge, provide campus resources, outside community resources, and then program developer. So even like creating systems for students to succeed, that's still helping students in the long run. And with those 5 people right away from the beginning, like with actual their face right there, they're less likely to feel alone and they're less likely to fall in the cracks. And it's not limited to faculty, like everyone plays that role. But I think we just need to be more explicit of who those 5 people are.
The obstacles and challenges is for the institution to have the buy-in, redefining across the roles, what are the roles across Coastline College. Also having effective personnel implement the redesign given to the current state budget. Providing consistent training throughout Coastline College, which includes all staff and faculty that assist students in student services. Faculty participation and support, of course, implementing the advising model that is including faculty advising. Currently using multiple, sometimes overlapping technology platforms to coach, advise, and support students.
Okay, if any of you ever had ideas and asked for a new project, you always ask for funding, right? Money is at the center of the world. So how much is this going to cost? We have projected the cost, technology cost related to Dolphin Connect, Civitas Cranium Cafe. Evidently, we already have this cost, right? Secondly, we have personnel. Now, this is a new cost, new paraprofessionals, classified staff. $150,000 to $200,000, a bargain. And we have grant-funded employees advising director, coordinator, new position to $80,000 to be determined positions. And next. No, prior to that. And, oh, there's a missing slide right here. But there are other costs related to that and some resources, $10,000. The college and the district has said that we are in deficit. Where will we get the money? Number 1, ask Dr. Weisfenning. He is here present and understanding the importance of this Guided Pathways initiative. If he says no, go to Dr. Adrian. Dr. Adrian says no, we need further research, then we have to go to our beloved VP. And I am sure that she will say no until there is further development in funding. Well, lastly, we could go to our distinguished guest at the Chancellor's office and ask that we could be a pilot project and doing this wonderful Guided Pathways. And we just need a few $100,000s, less than $1 million to do this.
A bargain.
A bargain. But in case she says no, that she needs to further develop her relationship with us, we have 3 ways to get to this. Number 1, data. I wish Dr. Data Aaron is here, but data-driven decisions. We are very unique in that our students are, many of them are online, incarcerated, part-time, and some full-time. We have a very complex 21st century student population. So looking at the data and really understanding their data, who they are and what they need, we can better plan and project services that they will need. Secondly, if due to the onboarding efforts and all the marketing efforts, our group efforts create students to stay with us longer, higher rate of retention and completion, that will result in higher apportionment, which means we will have money. some studies, some pilot studies across the US have shown that these measures indeed increase retention and completion, and in effect pays for the advisor salaries. So that is one wonderful way to go. Secondly, technology. We have many bright young members here who love technology, and students whose talents that we could utilize to use technology more efficiently and effectively to communicate and to create and develop and strengthen relationships. Third, now talking about relationships, money is great, but actually it's the love in relationships that makes the world go round, right? So we need to create a relationship with students. That means we have to be considerate of their needs, but not only the students, but also the caretakers, the staff, the counselors, the advisor, the guided pathway team, and see what they need. We do not want to overwhelm them with new initiative upon new initiatives and overwhelm their schedule and their lives. That way they cannot take care of these students. We need to reprioritize and make sure that we evaluate all the tasks, simple transactional tasks. Could those be given to student workers? Next higher level to advisors? And the professional level, the ones that really need training at the counselor's level? Can we integrate and bring everybody together, from the dual enrollment director who touches our K-12 students, who become our students, who in effect advises, to the extended learning evaluators, bring them into the loop, and pull all the deans and everyone at Coastline together to provide the web, the relationship, create the relationship one-on-one. I think that would be priceless. Okay, and to show you our structure for going forward, and that is just a recommendation. Here's Nicole.
Okay, so where do all these people go, right? Not only that, but in talking with the students, we understand that they're maybe only utilizing a snapshot of the counseling and advising services that are available to them. Sometimes it can be us for the first time after they've already been here for a year, or we talk in our meeting like, oh, I didn't know this program existed. In addition to that, looking at the staffing side and talking with the different departments, there was a lot of comments such as, you know, it would be great to know what the faculty were doing, or it would be great to know what sort of changes were being made. Or, God, I didn't know we had a retention specialist. Who are they? What do they do? So in proposing a reorganization, it's mainly to bring everything to a centralized location for a few reasons, mainly for communication, better flow of communication across the boards, and also to have a level of accountability. Who is who's reaching out to these students? When is that happening? We know our populations vary greatly. There's different touch points that need to be happening, and it needs to be happening strategically. So it allows us to be accountable in those measures as well. Also just increased workflow, better processes and procedures across the departments. And overall that translates back to the student experience, right? If things are at a high functioning level at the department-wise, the students are gonna see that in the seamless services that they're receiving through us. Okay, so three touch points we want to talk about in regards to transforming the student experience. Overall, what are we looking to accomplish here? We really want to, again, integrate the counseling experience, the advising services, the peer mentors, the faculty advisors. Let it be easily identified, right? The student knows who's their team, how do I get in touch with them, what can they help me with, and when should I be connecting with them. Overall, this helps the student to feel connected, and also it really helps to focus their program and where they should be moving. If we can have proactive and data-driven counseling, again, this takes us back to the holistic approach. We want students to know we don't just care about the class you're going to take or what you're going to take next semester. We understand that you are an entire person. And what does that mean for your success educationally? If you're struggling or have other concerns outside of the classroom, you're not going to be as successful as if we're able to connect with those. And then lastly, going back to equity, those that have or need the most touch points are getting those touch points, and that they're getting them strategically. We have incarcerated, we have military, we have adult students, we have students straight out of high school. There's a lot of different needs and questions and concerns that come from these different communities. So ensuring that they're getting the right appropriate amount of counseling. and at the right time.
We have done extensive research, as you could see. Do you have any questions?
Do you have any questions for the group? Dr. Adrian?
Doing your research, was there a model, was there a college that impressed you in terms of the outcomes that you described? What did it look like?
I can't say there's a specific model, and I think that's partially because Coastline is so unique. However, the message we heard over and over again when we talked to students is that they liked to have that one person that they knew, that knew them, that knew their history, and they were able to create that relationship. Whether or not every single student needs that is a second discussion to occur. But if we're thinking an equity-minded approach, then we need to recognize that those students that do need that, that's what we need to provide.
If I can add to that, a specific school we looked at too, it's Bakersfield College, had an interesting model in terms of what they were looking at for counseling roles, for the faculty roles, and what it means to be a faculty advisor. How is that delineation of responsibilities drawn? Which for us is really interesting because, like I said, we don't have the staff to say, I work with business and Yesenia works with psychology. We all have to be in it together. Students can come to any one of us so they can form relationships, but to better serve our population, we have to be able to counsel and advise across the board. So if we can't have singular advisors assigned to different categories, how does that look? And Bakersfield seemed to have a very similar approach and student population that kind of mirrored something of our own.
And also, I've met and also consulted with the Christina Hubbard. She is EAB, a senior researcher, and she's done her research on holistic advising, and she has since then moved on to EAB and has worked with several community colleges across the U.S., especially in Virginia. And she has also shared the model of a Virginia college that focuses on online students as well. So she has stated that multiple studies have shown that there is an increased retention and completion rates, and it really does result in higher level of funding. Dr. Weiss-Fenny?
No, doesn't look like looks like we're having discussions about making sure everybody's muted, so.
Just checking. I
Just
couldn't read it
checking,
from back
all
here.
right. Any other final questions? Great, thank you guys very, very much. And our final group for the day will be student academic persistence.
So thank you for saving the, yeah. So thank you for,
On Slack, check Slack.
so thank you everyone. We are the Student Academic Persistence Design Team, and we'll start off by introducing ourselves. I'm Nate Harrison, Director of Online and Distance Learning Programs here at Coastline. I'm also one of the co-team leaders here.
Celeste Ryan, Coordinator Disabled Student Services and Co-Chair of Persistent.
Sasha Montero, Instructor of Sociology and Human Services.
Leah Fleming, Director of Student Equity and Title IX.
Yesenia Gonzalez, Lead Academic Success Coach.
Renee Gutierrez, Title III NPC Project Director.
And not with us here today are three other members of our team. Cody Pontius, who works with the Division of Innovative Learning. Oceana McCollum, who works he's the English instructor here, as well as Lisa Shore, who works as DSPS. So they all played a big part in our project, so I want to thank them too. So I'm really encouraged after seeing the other presentations that a lot of the outcomes, the ideas, are somewhat similar to ours. So we're very encouraged by that. So to start off, we, through our research, through our talking with the students, and through our experiences working at the college, we identified 4 barriers to success for academic persistence. And those barriers were student support services and resources are not centralized. So a lot of students here through life, life happens while they're in college. They may have financial needs, food needs, mental health support needs, and we have a really good array of services here at Coastline, but many students don't know they exist. In fact, a lot of our faculty and staff don't know they exist either. So it's a problem. Second thing is that students feel isolated, that they navigate college on their own. For those who have a parent or a sibling who went to college, they have that resource that they can let them know who you should talk to, who you should ask questions to. And many of our students who are new to students or first-time college students don't have that resource. And so sometimes they don't know who to ask for help or where to ask for help. The third barrier we identified was ineffective use of current early alert system. Now, early alert systems are fantastic for catching students who fall off track. We started using one about 1.5 years ago, and we still have a handful of faculty and a handful of students who are benefiting from this. Unfortunately, the majority of our students are not. And the fourth barrier we identified was students feel disconnected emotionally and culturally. We have a very diverse group of students in our college, and not all of them feel they connect to the content, to the instructors, or to the class, the way it's being taught in general. So with those 4 barriers, we brainstormed and came up with 4 solutions. So 4 areas of focus are a resource hub, success network, a skilled and committed use of early alert, and the last thing would be institutional commitment to culturally responsive teaching, relevant pedagogy and practices. So this time we'll talk about each of those and hand it over.
Next slide. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the Resource Hub. In Coastline Pathways 1.0, we need to have a resource hub. The Resource Hub would serve as a centralized online resource for students to learn about the college and how to access information as it relates to departments, services, and resources. The Resource Hub will be easily accessed through Canvas, up to date, and include an intuitive research function. Research that we gathered shows that through, if we look at our Pathways book, thank you. If we look at 10 ways everyone can help and support success and the Center for Community College Student Engagement at the University of Texas in Austin state that only a small fraction of students take advantage of the various services the college has to offer. Furthermore, colleges often assume that students possess sufficient knowledge to seek out and make use of support services. Yet many students lack the social networks or family members with college experience to provide them with information to support their navigation of the college environment. In addition, college has changed a lot. I know when my son and daughter went away to college, I remember my husband just badgering them about getting the catalog. And you carry it around in your notebook. And you check it all the time to make sure you're on track with graduation. And my son went to the bookstore and says, "Where's your catalog?" And went back to the bookstore manager, and the manager said, "Tell your dad to look at our course, look at our website. It's all there. Can you write that in a letter, because he keeps bugging me." So anyway, and then further challenge is that the support that students may need is located in, this was research, multiple buildings across campus. And I thought, not at Coastline, we're not even in the same zip code. So a lack of coordination leaving students unclear on where to go to get the help that they need. So what is the solution? The Resource Hub. The college, we also operate, I think Coastline does, we operate in a way that once a student enrolls, that somehow they're transported through this magical pathway and that they know everything that they need to know about what we do for them. When in fact, they really don't. And when we sat down as a persistence group, when we sat down with our student representatives, they explained, they echoed the four things, the four miscomings that we do with students, that they didn't know where to go and that they had a hard time finding. 2 of them were seasoned college students. They had been to no less than 2 other colleges, so that they knew we had the information, but they explained how difficult it was for them to really find the information that they knew was there, but they couldn't find it. Again, the resource hub is what's going to help us. We know that Dolphin Connect, all of us are very familiar with Dolphin Connect as an early alert system. But Dolphin Connect also provides a student-facing system which is where the resource hub could be located. It would serve as the space for the resource hub. It would be located within Canvas. The content would be developed by departments, programs, and services. The information contained would be informational as well as engaging, and would include an intuitive search capabilities for ease of use for faculty, staff, and administrators, so we could all use it. Next slide. All right, now I'm Oceana. She was sick today. Oceana, we hope you're feeling better. Okay. So next up is our Success Network. Okay. The previous team called it, and we called it too, the Team of 5, but we revised our name and we want to call it the Success Network. Based on the student's learning journey, career and major choice, and other specific needs, the Success Network would act as the student's point of contact to the college, either answering questions themselves or putting the student in contact with the appropriate person. An example, you have a veteran student who would meet with Tom Boskamp in the Veterans Administration Center, who discloses that they, while they were serving our country, became injured, and that they don't quite learn exactly the same way. So Tom takes the student, and this has happened, actually takes the student by the hand, comes across the walkway into special programs and services, introduces the veteran to my staff, asks for me, and I sit down with the student and I talk to them about how accommodations and services might assist them in being successful in their class. Through our discussion, I find out that this student has identified themselves as a student that's AA bound, with the hopes of concurrently completing a certificate in paralegal. I look at the course schedule, and they're enrolled in one of Stephen Barnes' classes, so I inform that not only is he the department chair of paralegal, but he is one of our full-time faculty members who has available office hours, and I let the student know about his office hours. In addition, I take her over to the Student Success Center and introduce her to Heba, who's in charge of the Student Success Center, and introduce her and tell her how the Student Success Center can help her through her course of study. Within an hour, she has her Success Network. It is contained Tom Boskamp, myself, Celeste Ryan, and my staff, Heba from the Student Success Center, and Stephen Barnes. Like the athlete example that Rob Johnstone mentioned in his 2017 Pathways All College address to Coastline Community College, students who have a built-in cross-functional support system are most likely to persist. This is an actual student example. Contact information for the individuals that were part of your Student Success Network, once again, would be part of Dolphin Connect, and they have a capability of showing who those resource people would be and would serve to answer any question that that particular student might have.
Okay, so the third area of focus was a recommendation to implement an early alert system. Currently, Coastline is using Dolphin Connect, which is powered by Starfish Early Alert. And this is a tool where faculty members can identify students who are struggling in the class, and they can raise a flag. There's other options there's other features to Dolphin Connect, such as raising a kudo, completing a success plan, and also completing progress surveys. But if a faculty member was to raise a flag, we put a picture up here of what happens when a flag is raised. So as soon as a flag is raised, a team, which is the academic success coaches here at Coastline, and the students themselves are informed that a flag has been raised under their name. The team then contacts the student, and we make 4 contact attempts to be able to communicate with the student and give them the necessary support. So this is kind of what we're recommending to have here at Coastline. Things that we would need is integration into Canvas for easy access for both faculty and students, training and for staff and faculty. Currently, all students, all staff, and all faculty have an account with Dolphin Connect. So we would need training for that. And also participation from different departments. Like I mentioned, currently, the ones who are responding to these flags are coaches. But we would like to include other departments, other areas, other staff into this as well. And also an awareness campaign. We've had Dolphin Connect for quite a while already, like a year or more, I think. And but not a lot of students know about it. And like Celeste mentioned, there's a resource hub in there. There's a flag that students can raise on their own saying, hey, I need help. And that would go to us, and then we can call them and contact them and see how we can support them. So an awareness campaign is definitely necessary. And those are the recommendations we have. And Sasha's gonna talk about some of the work we've done so far.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of data regarding the progress surveys that have been launched. So we launched progress surveys both in spring 2019 and then also currently. So just to give you a little bit of comparison, in spring 2019, we had about 150 instructors who looked at and completed the surveys. And in comparison to this semester, we have about 155 instructors. So they roughly stayed the same. But where we do see a big increase is when we look at the kudos. So in spring of 2019, we had about 400 kudos for outstanding academic performance given. And this semester, we've had 860 kudos given for outstanding academic performance. So it's more than doubled. 2019 spring, we had over 200 flags that were raised for either attendance concerns, missing assignments, or overall course concerns. And currently this semester, we've had 908 flags raised for attendance concerns, missing assignments, and overall course concerns. So the data shows that more instructors are taking the time to get trained to use Dolphin Connect and also to actually use it.
Okay, so a common theme about what we've been doing today is about this experience that we're creating as a seamless experience for students, but also meeting students where they are. And I think a part of that conversation is having that equity mindset that we have in our definition of guided pathways. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is culturally responsive teaching and practices. And so here it's about looking at our practices and saying, are we looking at students sometimes as a deficit, or are we looking at the diversity that's coming into our classrooms as an asset? And so when we think about our students as assets, then we can think about where they're coming from and what their reference points are coming from. So I'll give you an example. I love the game of baseball, but if I can tell you the number of times I've seen math questions in the context of baseball, and if I didn't know anything about baseball, I am now cut off from that, how to solve that problem, right? So that context and where you're coming from it makes a big deal. And so what we're talking about is how do we create these practices and these teaching that kind of reflects that.
So on the slide before, when we talk about culturally responsive teaching and practices, these are our recommendations here. The slide before there showed that we would like our college to adopt a definition of what that looks like. Because we know and understand that not all folks know and understand what culturally responsive teaching is, so we have to state a standard of what that is going to look like for our faculty, staff, and us as a community. So that definition is also there on our handout here for you all. We also know one of our things that we talked about, and one of our researchers that we studied was Luke Wood, who's an instructor down in San Diego. And he stated that if we ignore diversity, we ignore the diversity that we do not see. And so for a lot of times for us as colleagues, for us as students, if students do not see themselves in the curriculum, I'm not going to be as engaged. If I do not see a faculty member that may look like me or a staff member that may look like me, I may not be as engaged. And so we use that same example that Renee used for baseball. If I'm in a class on history and they're talking about, I want you to give me the history of MLB. That's great, but there's a lot of other history. Can I choose to do my project on the Negro Leagues? And as a faculty member, how can you include that culturally relevant content into your work? So some of our recommendations are to develop and implement equitable hiring practices. We know that when we do our hiring that we go through the equity training, but can we do a deeper dive of what that looks like and work with district on that? We want to incorporate culturally responsive professional development. Like I said, we gave you this definition, but what does that look like for me as a faculty member? What does that mean that I have to do? And so some of that is to be able to teach culturally responsive teaching. It's using literature. You know, using the work of race conscious literature, but some people may not know what that looks like. So we need to do professional development across the board. Also is to adapt, oh, this is going to Renee, so I'm gonna give it back to him so he can finish this up.
So we were looking at specifically the teaching, and when we were talking to the faculty in our group, they recommended a few things. And so one was about adapting course outline records as applicable to include the culturally responsive pedagogy. Number two is that I've been told that the rubric needs to be updated anyways, which was the academic quality rubric, but that the rubric should include a commitment to that culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum design. And then as kind of Lee brought up, that previous slide we had was a definition. So if we use that as a definition and kind of our anchor, it's also what we recommend for people to use to say, are my practices and what I'm teaching culturally responsive?
Okay, so with those 4 recommendations implemented, we meet all the 6 factors that we feel will help students academically persist at Coastline. So this time I'm going to open up our floor to questions or comments.
All right. Any questions, Tom? Neil?
As your group and the previous group likely know, I love the Success Network. Thank you so much. I love that it's within each student's MyCCC. And I guess a recommendation and or a question is, I wonder if we can have 30 or 40 people who can put people in for the students. So as Coordinator Ryan was talking about, I walk the student here, here, and here, or Tom Boskamp walk here and here. Why don't we just automatically have Celeste Ryan or Tom Boskamp who can go in and go, you need this person, you need this person, you need this person. That person gets an email, hey, Nate Harrison has been referred to you as a person to be on their success team, on his success team.
Yeah, we do agree with that because everyone's got different backgrounds. Like if there's a veteran, there's certain people that would benefit them more than others. And so, yeah, that identifying certain people that would match a certain person.
And our recommendation was actually that it be automated. So based on the supplemental information in the CCC Apply application, that we can preload many of those people because we know that not all of our students are physically here.
And I saw the librarian, Elizabeth.
The librarian, Elizabeth. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your work. I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, so take this like in stride. I'm looking forward to phase 2 of this. When you showed the slide that was about Dolphin Connect, it showed the flag and it showed this circle, but it never really circles back to like the faculty member to creating that relationship. And so as the other ones were talking about creating the relationships, I'm just trying to make sure that the technology that we adopt is able to do that. So could you talk a little bit more about that technology and if it's able to do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So, yes, so when coaches close a flag, meaning that they've contacted the student, they provided the services, we close the flag and we put our comments, our notes of what the conversation was about, what resources were provided, and we include the instructor. So the instructors get an email saying, you know, or informing them of what's happened with the conversation with the student, and that's kind of closing the loop. And we always advise faculty members that if they feel that the student is still struggling, then they can always raise another flag and it will start the process again.
Could you expand on what happens when you send the student a kudos? Like, is there any back and forth between that since it's in a different platform than Canvas?
So students also get emails as soon as they get a kudo raised. Now this is where the the campaign for awareness would really help, because currently Dolphin Connect, again it's Starfish Early Alert, picks up or is informed by banner. So it has only students' emails. So what we want is for students to go in there and update the information, put in their preferred email, and they can also even opt in to get text messages. So as soon as they get a kudo, it would go to the text message or to their preferred email. So currently, even though faculty members might be raising their kudos for students, at this point, I'm not 100% sure if students are actually seeing that, because we know that many students don't really look into their student email. So that's where the informing students that they have this resource would be very helpful.
I actually, as I was coming in, received an email from one of my students. She had gotten a kudo for a writing assignment that she had done, and so she was sharing it with me. So, yeah, and it works.
And even if students see the emails, they don't always necessarily come and tell us, oh, thank you for the kudo, because it's not us raising it, it's the faculty members. So I'm not informed if students are seeing the kudos and, talking to faculty members themselves. Even with the flags, sometimes if students don't respond, I find out later that, oh, they already spoke to the faculty member and they completely skipped us, which is okay, because our goal is for them to communicate with the instructors, right? So, yeah.
I had a question, I have two questions. So one question is, how many faculty members are currently using Dolphin Connect?
So the current data shows that for this semester for fall, there were 155 instructors who viewed it, but only 124 used it.
The second comment and a question, I think the area on culturally responsive pedagogy is really important. So in doing your research, I wondered if you looked at how many of all the courses that we offer actually has culturally responsive content.
Well, mine do for
pedagogy.
sure.
For sure.
Not look at all of our courses to see, but we do know through the development of a program of Moja that we're working with faculty to develop their courses if they're not already, to become culturally responsive in their teaching. So we know that we're doing that through a program through Moja. We know that it happens through the IRC. We know that specific faculty are doing it, but we want to be able to do training. We looked at Peralta Community College, and they have an equity rubric. So how can we adapt that for here at Coastline to use to our faculty to say, hey, let's look at your syllabus through the Faculty Success Center, and let's go through this to see, are your practices meeting the standard? And if not, how can we support you to change that?
I think this is where a partnership with the Academic Senate would be really helpful. I know that, and I know there are others, but UC Berkeley at one point really went through a very thorough curriculum transformation project, as well as other colleges. And so that might be something that we could work with the academic. Definitely we need the Academic Senate support on it.
Just in addition, so I think that's going to be important to do that. I think the ultimate test as to whether this is working is if students don't report to us, or they do tell us that they do feel emotionally and culturally connected to us. Because ultimately, I think that's what we're heading towards. So maybe that's also more data that we need to gather.
Great. Any other questions? No? Oh, John, Chair.
I just wanted to comment that, there's a real depth of preparation and research that's gone into this, and real quality thinking too. And that's not easy to do. And I just want to thank you for the work that you and the other teams have done. This is tremendous, and really encourage you to keep going with this. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
I already have a mom. It's my husband.
All right.
Oh, so we just wanted to say thank you again, and share my favorite quote about change that you probably heard me say 10 times now, but change is hard in the beginning, it's messy in the middle, and it's beautiful in the end. And we are so, so grateful to be in the messy middle with all of you. And we so appreciate all of the time you have spent with this material and doing the research and dealing with a million communications from me and Josh.
Yes, it's very exciting to see where we're heading, right? And so we'll allow Dr. Adrian to give us a few closing words and thoughts, and then we'll start our 3-day week.
Thank you very much. Note that I have not seen these presentations before, so I'm just going to share some very preliminary responses to it. First, I want to thank Dr. Weisfenning for coming here. As you know, he has a very busy schedule, but I want to thank him for making this afternoon a part of his day, as well as Natalie. We've had Natalie with us for a couple of times now, and so thank you so much to Josh and Shelley for providing the leadership and being there to support all of you, but most of all, thanks to all of you. I echo what Dr. Weisfenning said. I'm really, really impressed with the research that you've done, and that you just haven't stuck to what you know, but have really taken the time to understand things that you haven't experienced yourselves. I think, as I said, I think in the first part, we were at a conference, and this one really highly innovative and very successful entrepreneur said that sometimes innovation, or most of the time, innovation happens because you go out of the things that you know. It has to come from a point where you're really experimenting on something and piloting something that you haven't done before. So I always want us to be reminded of why we have embarked on these guided pathways, right? So just to remind all of us, we have embarked on this to increase student success. And as we do so, we have an equity mindset, and we want to make sure that the performance outcomes or the success outcomes are equitable among the different groups. And so we want to close the achievement gaps where there exist, and we know that it exists for the different populations of students that we serve. And also we want to impact the experience of students. And as we've heard today, it's not easy to navigate Coastline Community College. And that's true, but it's especially harder for students who may not have had a family member who's gone to college. And it's very different from high school. Although we may think of ourselves as a very different or very small institution, it's a big place to be, especially for a student who hasn't been to college before. And also, I think that you have been reminded, how many do we have? 13 design principles, and I won't be able to recite all of them for you, but I know that I've always reminded you and requested you to remember that design principles, that our aim is to transform and to be able to look at things differently and to do things differently. And I think you've risen to the challenge. Thank you all for that. For the onboarding, I loved all of the things that you presented. And it's funny, right? I mean, it seems, I think we tend in higher education sometimes to think as if everybody understands what we're talking about. And so it's interesting, as Mai said, I think 3 years ago, we challenged all of the managers to go through the application process and to register. And I don't think even half of us were able to do it. And there was a lot of frustration. And indeed, there's not a lot we can do with the CCC Apply unless we go out of it. There are very few community colleges that have designed their own. And I know that there's a project right now, I don't know where that is, of simplifying it, but I can tell you it will not be simple. And I myself went through it, and I found it very difficult, especially because I have some credentials that are outside of this country. And so I think the ideas that you have about making sure there's a video and that you can explain the terminology and being prepared to fill out the application and what you need, I really like that. I would probably challenge you, secondly, I also like the communication piece. And that's a real weakness for us. In fact, Aaron did a study for us some time ago, and we lost a lot of students, not only from the time of application to registration, but also even after they have registered. We lost a significant millions of dollars because students decided to drop because there was no communication. You know, they were left by themselves to navigate the application process, and when they've registered, there's nothing that says, hey, how are you doing? Are you still interested? first day of classes is coming up, et cetera, so I really love that. In terms of the 7 steps, I actually want to push you to reimagine that. I was thinking, for example, just as Paolo said, where is the career coaching? Many of the students don't even know, right, what kind of path they want to pursue. So I think somewhere that should be at the top, as well as financial aid. Because if you direct them to financial aid after registration or during registration, it's too late. Because it takes weeks to, and that's a whole new module on financial aid, because that takes also a lot of effort. So, but in general, I really, really appreciate the recommendations that you've made, and I think it will definitely provide for a more positive experience for our students. And I really liked that you focused on creating a welcoming environment. And I'm always reminded of Dr. Victor Rios, who we had during our opening day, that in the end, what matters the most to students is the sense of belonging. So I think to have that imparted to them from the get-go is really critical. In terms of the advising, as you know, this has been near and dear to my heart. I actually commend you. This sometimes is a difficult conversations in many colleges in California, because there's a sense oftentimes that this is a threat to the counseling function. And so I really commend the cross-functional nature of the group and the openness in the conversations and in looking at the models that took place. While we don't have the $1 million, I think we can still do it. The fact is we have a lot of resources, we're just not utilizing them efficiently. We have Canvas, we have Starfish. Whether they're the perfect ones going forward, we don't know. The problem right now is there isn't one technology that provides all of the coaching, the communication, the orientation. But I think that we can, with the resources that we have, pilot, this case managed model. I like the idea of centralizing it and making it clear to the students as to where to go. I think that's really important. In both the advising and the persistence, I love the idea of the resource hub. And guess what? That doesn't cost money to create. So I just want you to think through this with the current resources that we have, and how can we kind of repurpose or reorganize or redesign or reimagine what we already have, understanding that there might be need for additional resources. And in the end, even though we're poor right now, very poor, it doesn't mean that we will not have resources for the things that are really important to us. So this is how we pursue grants. There's still the guided pathways grants, and there are other ways to make it happen. But I loved the intent and the recognition that advising a student takes place in different arenas and in different forms, and that every student does not have the same need, right? So how do you provide that need? And I agree that I think it is important for the students to know that there's a group of people around them that can provide these resources. And I've always said that the faculty advising, and we're very lucky to have faculty that are very interested in, in officially assuming that role, because they're already doing it. The fact is, Stephen Barnes advises so many students, and many of the faculty who sit here talk to many of their students, and they're always in contact with them. So, and the early alert sounds promising. Again, it's how do we use the resources that we have more efficiently? We currently have Civitas, and we also have Starfish, just for different uses, but they can really be connected. The most important thing, I think, is how do we create this buy-in? Because it's there, but we're not using them, fully. And so how do we ensure that indeed there's a valuing of those resources and that there's a commitment to use them? I love the Success Network. I love all of the ideas that you presented, and I'm especially excited about the culturally responsive pedagogy and creating an environment where I think all of our students feel validated, both in the practices outside of the classroom and, of course, in the content that takes place in the classroom. So I have many, many more comments, but I know I'm standing between you and potentially an early weekend, so I'm going to wrap up. I just want to tell you I'm so excited and inspired by the ideas that you have presented. We'll have an opportunity, the cabinet will now have an opportunity to learn more about those, and we may be in contact with you to ask you more questions. But I think it's going to be an exciting time in October 2020 when indeed we launch Guided Pathways 1.0, and I know that we will have several iterations of it going forward. So thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you, everybody. Again, like Dr. Adrian said, once President Cabinet has a chance to review the proposals one more time and take a look at everything, Shelley and I will be in touch with all the design teams on the next steps. Thank you, everybody.